Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and welcome to this Saturday Stakes preview for what's taking place at Saratoga. Make sure to press that like button and subscribe to the new NYRA Bets YouTube channel to get race previews, not just at Saratoga, but across the country. Right now, you can check out our video that I have with Michelle Yu, where we talk about the big Saturday card out at Del Mar, headlined by, of course, the Grade 1 Pacific Classic, as well as two other Breeders' Cup Win-Your-In races, the Del Mar Handicap and the Green Flash. Let's talk about the Saturday stakes races we have at Saratoga. We have three of them, three graded stakes races, a grade 1, a grade 2, and a grade 3. Some really intriguing fields, some really nice horses. I think you can get a couple of prices across in this sequence. There are some horses, maybe not huge, like 15 to 1, 20 to 1 runners, but I think you can find some nice prices, 5 to 1, 8 to 1 range that you can really build your tickets around. So let's dive in and talk about those three races on the Saturday card at Saratoga. And let's kick things off with the Prioress Stakes, a grade 3 going 6 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-old fillies. And this is an intriguing 9-horse field. Your morning line favorite is the number 7, Too Sharp, for trainer Phil Bauer. And Bauer has had a phenomenal meet to this point at Saratoga. You have to take everything he is sending out as a very live. This is the daughter of Twirling Candy, who won in the second start very impressively, winning by 11 1/4 lengths over maiden competition at Saratoga on August 2nd. But here's the thing. That was a big number. She earned a 98 Beyer speed figure in that race, towers over the field. Her debut speed figure at Churchill Downs in her previous start was a 70. She finished second in that race. Not a bad effort by any stretch. And she was off a little bit slow in that race. Last time she got out up front, and she got an easy lead. She was up by multiple lengths throughout most of that race, was never pressed in any way, shape, or form. Now she's facing winners for the first time, switching off Lasix, and not just facing winners, but stepping up in class against stakes winning company. Listen, would it shock me if she won this race? No, but it also would kind of surprise me if she did a little bit, in that we've seen a lot of big time maidens fire off a big effort for their maiden breaking score and regress a little bit, switching off the Lasix, going up against winners. Maybe you don't get the trip quite the same way you did as the first time when you broke your maiden very easily in front running fashion. Now, listen, she's got Junior Alvarado aboard. I like Junior a lot. First of all, he's just a good guy. Second of all, he gives a lot of really great rides and aggressive rides to his horses. He's going to get this horse out up front. There's no doubt about that. But it does make you wonder how good this horse is. The other thing is, that was only a 5-horse maiden field that she beat at Saratoga on August 2nd. So it wasn't as if it was this overwhelming field. There weren't a lot of other runners in this race. Now we have a field of 9, again, against much better company. Accepting a 7 to 5 morning line price on a horse like this, for me, it's just a horse I'm going to be going against. First out maiden winner, or, first time facing winners for a last out maiden winner and switching off Lasix, stepping up in class. Where am I going to look instead? Well, listen, I really liked the horse Tricky Temper the last time she ran, actually in the Union Avenue. She is stepping up in class, though. She's been facing largely state-bred competition. She's got a couple of notable finishes against open company, probably the most promising of which is going back to that 2-year-old season last year, in which she finished second in an off-the-turf race for the Matron Stakes. Again, that was a race carted for the turf, taken off the grass, run on the dirt, field of 7. She ends up finishing second that day to Jody's Pride. And this was back when Jeremiah Englehart, the trainer, was kind of still using her a little bit as a turf horse. She ran in the Chelsea Flower after that. Did not like that combination of going along and the turf, and really has become a dirt sprinter ever since then. Certainly the last 3 times out, you've seen increasing speed figures every single time. That start 3 back was against Open Allowance Company. That might give me a little bit of pause. The horse did break slowly that day and really didn't get the desired trip that she normally gets, which is more of a tracking, stalking trip. She doesn't need the lead. I think there's good versatility there. Dylan Davis is now aboard. One thing to keep in mind, on Saturday, a couple of jockeys that we're familiar with here in New York, John Velasquez, Flavian Pratt, They're riding down at Kentucky Downs on Saturday. So you're going to see a couple of horses with jockey changes. I would not read too much into that at all. Just a matter of supply and demand to some extent. But she answered a lot of questions in that Union Avenue when she switched off Lasix, ran a career best buyer speed figure 91. I still don't love 7-2 as the morning line price here for a horse that is taking a class step up, facing tougher company. I wonder if that last race, if she bumps off that at all, that was run on August 16th. So we're coming back on pretty short rest and trying to go up against, I think, tougher company than what she faced in that race, going up against Lilu and Security Code, among some others. So that was also only a field of 6. Again, smaller field sizes, shorter prices, kind of willing to play against some of these. The horse that I'm really intrigued by is the number 9 Brightwork, and that probably doesn't surprise anyone who follows me on social media and follows my picks or anything like that, even going back to last year. This was a horse I absolutely loved last year in the Adirondack, again in the Spinaway, where she beat Ways and Means in that really thrilling stretch battle. And then John Ortiz, the trainer, stretched her out for the Alcibiades at Keeneland, and then again in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. And what she showed was she's just simply not a 2-turn horse. And she's a 1-turn sprinter. I think she's very, very good at that. She was entered in the test. Anybody who follows racing knows what happened that day was while she was being saddled, lost her footing, kind of reared a little bit, and fell. Now, she was perfectly fine. She popped right back up. There was absolutely nothing wrong with her. And there are rules, though. And one of those rules is if a horse's essentially hindquarters hit the ground in the paddock, it's an automatic scratch if they leave their feet. And so she left her feet. She fell. She was an automatic scratch that day in the test. And there's a couple of things to note there. One, John Ortiz had the confidence in her to enter her in a grade 1, having not run since November 2023. That showed you an incredible amount of confidence he had in this horse. John Ortiz is not somebody who spots his horses lightly. I say that because during the Saratoga meet, he's had 9 entries. He's won 5 of them, 56%. He knows how to spot his horses, and he knows where to put them to maximize their abilities. He was putting this one directly into a grade 1. That should tell you everything you need to know about his confidence level in this filly. So what does he do? And here's another thing I will say, because John Velasquez was supposed to ride her that day. Luis Saez is going to be aboard today. John Velasquez came out, consoled John Ortiz in the paddock, and I don't think I realized just how much Ortiz had this horse ready to go until I saw his reaction. And you realized he knew she was sitting on a big effort. She comes back, works out regularly after that test, fires off an incredibly fast 47-2, 4 furlong bullet, going first to 35. Ortiz gives her a nice little light 5 furlong work leading up to this. I think she is completely cranked up, ready to go. This is a horse that has really outrun her, her sales price. She was a $95,000 purchase at Facing Tipton Keeneland November. Was not necessarily, the most sought after horse, sired by Outwork out of a Malibu Moon Dam, and, has won 4 times in 6 starts, and the only 2 losses were going 2 turns. So she's never lost going around 1 turn. Draws the far outside. You get Luis Saez aboard. She's got a ton of versatility. She can go straight to the lead. She can sit off the pace. I love the way this sets up for her. I think at 9-2, if you can get anywhere near that price, she is certainly formidable in this spot. Now, if you're looking for a little bit of a bigger price, maybe a horse that needs to take another step forward a little bit, I think a lot of people might look to a horse like the number 5 Carmelina for trainer Butch Reed, coming out of the last race at Colonial, winning that Penny Chenery down at Colonial, going 7 furlongs, in winning that in front-running fashion. I don't know if she's got the speed to compete with a horse like Too Sharp. That just seems a little bit faster. I will agree. I'm glad Butch has cut her back to doing 1 turn. That seems to be what she does best. I'm glad he got her on the dirt, which is where she seems to do her best running. This is a horse that finished 2nd in the Busher, won the Gin Talking. This is a good horse. This is a multiple stakes winning horse, and has shown the ability to win outside of just winning against Pennsylvania breds, which is a question, of course, that we have for the number 3 Tricky Temper. Carmelina, though, 10-1 on the morning line. The speed figures would need to get faster. No two ways about it. This is a horse I would probably include underneath, but this is a horse I think provides tremendous value in that way. And so if you think a horse like Tricky Temper, you think a horse like Brightwork is going to be much the best. And I think pairing a horse like Carmelina in a exacta or a trifecta, I think makes a lot of sense. She hasn't really shown the ability to win from off the pace, but she has run well even when she hasn't gotten the lead. Look at that race 2 back. I know it was at Presque Isle over the synthetic, but didn't get off that well that day, but showed the ability to pass horses. And I think that's important for what we're going to see potentially on Saturday. So something to keep in mind. Also came from off the pace in the Keswick going way back in August 2023. So again, she can pass horses, just usually does her best running up front. Consider that horse from a standpoint of using underneath and verticals. I'll say the number 1, Muccia, 8-1 in the morning line for Gustavo Delgado. Irad Ortiz Jr. board. You got to take everything Irad rides pretty seriously here. This one has the stakes win 2 back at Gulfstream Park. Has been working out extremely well coming into this race. 8-1 in the morning line. I do sometimes question how well that Gulfstream Park sprint speed translates up here. They just go another level of fast down there, and that track really kind of facilitates that. Obviously, Gustavo's got a very good horse running on Monday in the hopeful with the horse Ferocious. And this one is a very nice horse, nice mover as well. Effective running style in terms of tracking off the pace. Doesn't need the lead. This is still going to be a pretty significant class test for a horse that really just looks like a one-figure horse at this point. 2 starts back, stretched out to 7 furlongs last time. Not really that horse's game. So maybe to cut back to 6, you can kind of try to recapture what she had in the game face. But, for me, I'm probably not going to be using that one, or maybe deeper in like a super or try a little bit deeper in your verticals. But that's the Prioress there, which kicks off this kind of 3-race leg. Now, we are going to skip around a little bit. We're going to go to the next race, which is the grade 2, which is actually out of order. So it's going to go the Prioress, the Spinaway, and the Flower Bowl. For this purpose, though, we'll go to the Flower Bowl as our next race will end with the grade 1 Spinaway. And in the Flower Bowl, grade 2, going 1 3/8 for 4-year-old nut fillies and mares on the inner turf course. And the headliner for this is, of course, the Warlike Goddess, who has just been a staple of this division for so many years now, going back to really 2020, 2021, when she kind of started to break out, winning the Orchid in March 2021. She's been around for forever, 7-year-old mare, sired by English Channel, and has really been so well campaigned by Bill Mott. And, she really, she didn't quite have her fastball in that Breeders' Cup turf running against the boys. That's a tough field, going up against Auguste Rodin, going up against Up to the Mark, going up against Charrière. That's a tough field. Still made her run, as she always does, but ultimately kind of flattened out a little bit, finished 7th that day. Comes back into New York off a pretty significant layoff, finishes 3rd to Didia and Nisi Marie. And you go, well, maybe it's over for her. Maybe her best days are kind of behind her, and, she's 7 now. Well, then she goes down and runs at Delaware Park in the grade 3 and wins that race over a horse like Chop Chop and Vergara, who are nice horses, and, gets a 99 by her speed figure, and you go, man, she's right back to where she always was. So just needed a couple races. Now, this is 3rd back in the form cycle. Presumably, we're going to see her best effort. She's always run well at Saratoga. 6 starts, 3 wins, 2 seconds. So 5 for 6 in the exacta, 6 for 6 in the top 3. Has never finished out of the money at Saratoga's turf course, and is 4 for 6 at the 1 3/8 distance in terms of winning. So there's a lot to like here. Draws the inside rail, and will be able to save every bit of ground going around 3 turns, which is so important in these types of races. Another one who has vastly outrun her sales price, purchased for $30,000. How would you like to make that purchase? $30,000, has won $2.7 million. Not a bad return on investment there. But this is one who she's going to be tough to beat. She's going to make her run in the lane. Junior, I think, has actually ridden this horse quite well. I was not a big fan of the way Joel Rosario rode this horse at different times. I feel like Joelle's gotten her beat on a couple of occasions, just didn't really give her the right trip. And sometimes, listen, horses and riders don't always match up. And I just feel like she just really would get worked up for Joelle sometimes in a way that you just don't see her getting worked up for riders like, going back in the day, Julian Leparoux or even Junior now. So 7-5, she's certainly a formidable favorite and a very logical favorite. Second choice, McKulick for Chad Brown, Clarvich Stables, who's been having a great meet at Saratoga. One of the things I'll say about McKulick, this horse frickin' loves Saratoga. 6 wins, or 6 starts, 3 wins, 2 seconds, much like Warlike Goddess, 5 for 6 in the exacta, and coming off a win in the Glens Falls. And I'll be honest, I was against her that day in the Glens Falls. She was so much the best in that race, just easily blew by everybody. Keeps Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. This is another horse that's, generally is more of a closer, does have a little bit of tactical speed if necessary, but tends to be more of a closer in these spots. I really thought maybe she lost a little something off her fastball, or she didn't really have that upper level speed that sometimes we need to see in terms of those speed figures. She ran a career best 97 last time out, and that was also breaking from the far outside post, the 7th post in a 7-horse field. So, she's overcome this post position before with Irad aboard. Obviously, it goes without saying, you're going to need to work out a little bit of a trip if you're going to go around 3 turns and potentially go wide. I think she is absolutely best at this distance at 1 mile and 3/8, 3 for 4 in the exacta with 2 wins at this distance. There's not a ton of speed in this race, so I think that is something to keep in mind. There are a lot of closers, and it's going to be interesting to see how this race is run, because I can see a horse like Idea Generation, who finished second in the Waya 2 back, which is coming off a significant layoff. She ran that back in October 2023, but finished second to McKulick that day as a little bit of a pace setter. Last time out, didn't show really good speed, 6 wide the whole way around. It's interesting. Chad has her in this race for the same ownership group, Clarvich Stables. It feels like this horse might try to repeat what this horse did in the Waya, really kind of going out and setting the pace for a horse like McKulick to be able to close into. It's just an interesting thing to consider with Idea Generation, who is a 20-1 long shot. One thing I will mention is I did learn today that Nisi Marie is going to be scratching out of this race, going to be running down at Kentucky Downs instead. Something to keep in mind there. So she's out of the race and will not be running. But there are 2 European horses that I'm interested in talking about. One is for Charlie Appleby, and that is Eternal Hope. This is a horse that Appleby brought over to the United States last year from France, having previously run in Great Britain as well, and immediately gets 2 wins with Jamie Spencer aboard in the Jockey Club Oaks Invitational at Belmont at the Big A, and then again in the wins both of those over Nisi Marie. Not necessarily big speed figures or big spot, but the horse goes to the bench from October 2023 until earlier this month, August 1st, when she comes back in the Glens Falls against McKulick and Parnack and some of the others. And Chop Chop had Flavian aboard that day, now gets Manny Franco, which makes sense. Manny's kind of a backup rider for Charlie Appleby. And if Flavian's out of town at Kentucky Downs, Manny picking up the mount makes a lot of sense. We're not flying over William Buick for this. Jamie Spencer's actually down in Kentucky Downs as well, so that's kind of interesting. But Manny's aboard. This horse has a little bit of early speed, should be sitting a pretty comfortable trip, probably pretty close to the front, wants to get over to that rail to save ground. And, this one, you go back a couple, starts back in the UK, was running in the Epsom Oaks, going back to June 2023. So this one, it clearly was well intended. That race obviously didn't play out as well as they had hoped, but second back from a really long layoff, 5-1 for Charlie Appleby and Godolphin. You don't see that price every day. Now I know Manny's up on the mount, and it's not Flavian, it's not Irad, it's not William Buick. I get it, but that's not a bad price on a horse that might have another gear, especially as a 4-year-old. It's important to point out that Glens Falls ran a 92 buyer, which is actually the best buyer of her career, better than the 2 races she won last year as a 3-year-old. So maybe she's taken that step forward. It's interesting that Appleby has kept her over here, basically training in the United States. And it's just, like I said, fascinating to see how this horse has kind of gotten to this point. The other one that I'll mention that I'm intrigued by is Verbier. I think it's Verbier, the number 9 horse for Ralph Beckett. Now, that's interesting for a couple of reasons. One, Ralph Beckett has brought over exactly 5 horses in the last 5 years to run in North America. Every single one of those horses was in the Breeders' Cup. This is the first time in 5 years Ralph Beckett has brought over a horse from Europe to run in a non-Breeders' Cup race. That's kind of interesting. And this is, of course, a Breeders' Cup win in your end race. So is Beckett bringing this horse over because he thinks she's got a shot to potentially win this race? She is coming off a win in a stakes race last time out at York. And it's a fascinating development to see. And, it's just one that you don't see very often. And again, cutting back a little bit, has really never run poorly, only has 2 wins to her name, a couple of 4th place finishes in some other stakes races over there. Hasn't necessarily been running against any monsters over in Europe, but still, you tend to favor that European pedigree, that European form over what we see here in the United States. Sired by Frankel, there's good pedigree here to suggest this horse should be able to get the distance. Was able to run mile and 5/16 last time out and get the win. So not a huge difference in terms of the mile and 3/8 on Saturday. So again, interesting to see this one. Time form rating last time out was a 103. That'll be interesting to see whether or not she can kind of replicate that coming over here. There's been no official works here in the United States, so all the work has been done before, and she just ships over for the race. So we're just going to have to see how this one plays out. But I think at 10-1, an interesting consideration to make in this race. If you said, Matthew, where are you going with this race? I'd be hard-pressed to take a horse like Warlike Goddess at such a short price, but she'd probably end up being my top pick from a handicapping standpoint. From a betting standpoint, I think Eternal Hope is interesting. I'd love to see what McKulick ends up at. If McKulick floats up to like 7-2, 4-1, I would absolutely love that horse at that price. And I think Verbier is kind of interesting at 10-1. I might do a little bit of play with that. Of course, there's a horse like Parnack who just always seems to run, kind of better than people think. And a horse that finished second last time out at the Glens Falls at 21-1, gets Dylan Davis aboard for Christophe Clement. This horse, again, was, has a lot of lines in this horse's form, meaning a lot of layoffs, a lot of stops and starts. Now we get 2 back-to-back races, ran a 94 buyer last time out. Maybe he can take another step forward, has a little bit of early speed for these types of races. Not going to be confused with a speed horse in any other race, but has the ability to at least sit 3rd or 4th potentially during the early going. That's something to keep in mind. And Dylan, like I said, has been riding lights out. So maybe another horse to consider at a little bit of a price. All right, well, listen, let's switch over and talk about the headlining feature race for Saturday, which is the Grade 1 Spinaway, going 7 furlongs on the dirt for 2-year-old fillies. And this is an 11-horse field. And there is a horse in this race I absolutely love. But let's talk about the favorite first, because that's not the horse I absolutely love, though I really respect the Queen's MG, who is trying to go 3 for 3 at the Saratoga meet, sweeping the stakes races for the 2-year-old fillies. Won the Schuylerville, won the Adirondack, now going to try to win the Spinaway. And she won that Schuylerville opening week at 44-1. That's the biggest price we've had hit the board and win all year at Saratoga. So not only is she the biggest price, she's also trying to become the only horse this meet to win 3 races during Saratoga. Pretty incredible for trainer Safi Joseph Jr., jockeyed by Dylan Davis, who I just mentioned is having a terrific meet and has been bringing home these prices. That said, I do wonder if this horse is facing a little bit of a tougher company. The Adirondack, I don't know how good that field is. That number did not come back particularly strong, 73 buyer speed figure, and it really dropped off a cliff. So like the horse Italian Soiree, who finished second that day, earned a 54 buyer speed figure, had actually run a 65 in debut. So I don't know how good that field was necessarily that she beat. Atomic City, Dare to Breeze, fine horses. But again, this feels like a different level of competition that she's going to be facing. Needs to get a little bit faster. I think you see that reflected in the fact she's not even the morning line favorite in this particular race. The other thing to take into consideration is the Schuylerville, the race two back that she won. And listen, she did nothing wrong in the Schuylerville. She ran a great race from the far outside post. But it is fascinating that that was a race that was just a mess of a race. So you had a horse like Watton the Literal lose the jockey right away. You had a horse like Slang, who's actually in this race for Norm Cassie, drop Ricardo Santana Jr. down the back stretch as well. So you had two loose horses. Everybody was fine, but you had two loose horses. And it was just kind of a chaotic race, to say the least. And I'm not saying it was a fluky result because she backed it up with a dominant win in the Adirondack. So clearly, she has the goods. But at 7-2, I do wonder, she might need to take another step forward in speed figures because a lot of these horses have much better last time out efforts than she did in terms of those speed figures. Now, one of the horses that has those big speed figures is your favorite, which is Quiet Side, the number 11 horse, who is your actual morning line favorite for trainer John Ortiz, who I mentioned earlier regarding Brightwork. This one won impressively in debut up here at Saratoga, drew off easily, winning by 6 1/4 lengths, earning an 80 buyer speed figure, draws the far outside, which is kind of a good and bad situation. Sometimes young horses break out into the right because of, going towards open ground and open space. And so sometimes they will give up valuable ground on the inside and kind of lose ground to the field because they do that. But it also, from a sprint standpoint, gives jockey Luis Saez plenty of ability to get out and then judge how things are going to the inside. This horse has the ability to rate, which I think you cannot overstate in a 2-year-old race because many of these horses only know one way to win, which is gate to wire. Quiet Side, very formidable. If she's able to run back to that last effort or take a slight step forward, she is clearly a deserving favorite here, and is certainly a tough horse and looks to be a very, very good horse for John Ortiz, who, as I mentioned, has been spotting his horses extraordinarily well up here at Saratoga. That said, the horse that I absolutely love in this race is the number 7 Pondering. This is my top pick in the race. I love this horse for trainer Brendan Walsh, and it's got the Axeman, baby. Lawan Machado. Anybody who follows me knows I love betting the Axeman at Turfway Park in the winter. Machado is a great jockey. I think he's an underrated jockey. Of course, he's the jockey of Next, who is the dirt marathon superstar. But it's interesting that Machado's coming up with this horse and that Brendan is bringing Machado up with this horse. Brendan Brendan has plenty of jockeys up here that he could easily use. And the fact he's bringing Machado up, I think, says something about this Godolphin homebred, sired by Hard Spun. I encourage you, if you've not, watch this replay. And it's not an easy replay to get to because it's at Ellis Park. And of course, sometimes finding those races is a little bit of a challenge. But if you go and find that race, what is amazing to me is that this horse went up against another horse in that race who caught a flyer out of the gate. And this horse never panicked and just natural speed got up there pretty close to the horse right away. There was another horse in the mix as well. This horse had the maturity, and Machado had the instincts to just go, let these two go out in front a little bit more. We'll sit back. We'll travel wide. And that's exactly what he did. And he never asked the horse. He never asked the horse. And I'm not talking about, he shook the reins, but he never went to the crop. No. He did not even shake the reins on this horse. He did the opposite of whatever asking a horse is. That horse was under a tight hold all the way down the stretch and was just never challenged at all. One of the more visually impressive debuts, in my opinion. And 6-1 on the morning line. If you can get that price, I love that horse. And there's been a lot of buzz out of Kentucky that Brendan has got a lot of good 2-year-olds this year. This is one of them. I think this one looks very live. And I love the fact that this one's coming up from Ellis Park. We've seen some very good horses coming out of Kentucky and coming up here. So I think this one makes a lot of sense for this race. And it's interesting to see. I know you could say, well, what about that field that she was facing? Understandably so. But I think you could say that about a couple of fields. I think you could say that honestly about the field that like I said, the Queen's MG even beating the Adirondack, which was like what was really there that day. And you're getting a little bit of a better price. I really like that horse Pondering. A couple of other horses I want to mention here. Mark Cassie's had a tremendous Saratoga meet, winning 33% of his entries. Florent Giroux up on the mount for the number 2 Sherbini at 8-1. This horse that finished second in that Schuylerville. And the running lines tell you the whole story is the horse was all the way in the back, made a huge run late to get up to second, should appreciate the added distance. That's, again, the speed figures didn't necessarily pop too much, but look at that race 2 back at Churchill Downs. That became a very productive race because you saw Sherbini win that race, come out to finish second in the Schuylerville. You saw Strong State, who I'll talk about in a second, come out to win. And then you saw the third place horse, Dare to Breeze, come back to win next time out. So that was a productive race down at Churchill in terms of seeing the top 3 come and run back well. Obviously, the speed figures are going to need to move forward, and there are some questions there. But at 8-1, it feels like this is a horse that at least has some stakes experience and has the versatility to know how to get to the, can sit off the pace and can close and should appreciate the added distance. Again, you don't see that all the time from these 2-year-olds who typically only know how to win up front. To see a horse that can win from off the pace like that, I think is impressive. You can say the same thing about the number 1 horse, Immersive, 8-1 for Brad Cox, won off the pace in debut at Saratoga. Would need to get a little bit faster here. I don't love the inside rail for any horse, but, listen, sired by Nyquist. I do love those Nyquists. But the 7 furlong inside rail, don't love that combination, though I do like Manny riding for Cox, I should say, quite a bit in this spot. They're usually a very, very formidable duo when they team up. Another horse I'll mention, and this, maybe you go, Matthew, you're crazy. I'm a little interested in Slang at 15-1. Listen, lost the rider last time out. I don't know what exactly happened with Ricardo Santana Jr. that day, because Ricardo was easing that horse up and then all of a sudden went off. And I don't know if there was an equipment issue. I don't know if he felt like the horse, just wasn't traveling well and just kind of, but the horse maybe bucked a little bit and kind of got him off of him when he was slowing down. I don't know what happened. All I know is that horse went flying by me thinking it was having the time of its life on the, once it was loose without Ricardo on board, and was just, out for a Sunday stroll coming down the stretch. Eventually the outriders corralled her and got her under control. And like I said, she was fine coming out of that race. There was no injuries or no issues at all. And, I know some of the notes were, she took poorly to the kickback, etc. It's just interesting to see what kind of happened. But I like this horse a lot. I like Omaha Beach as a sire. This horse had a couple of good starts. I like the start. Actually, the debut, even against Botka with a twist, who's not a bad horse, was good. But then the next race out, winning at Churchill Downs, going 5.5, and third place horse coming back to win that day as well, I thought was beneficial to see. Again, I'm willing to draw a line through the Schuylerville and just go, that never happened. And see, listen, what do we have now? We got Kendrick Carmouche aboard today. One thing I know about Kendrick, he's going to send. He's going to send hard. And he's going to, so this horse is going to be up on the front end, I would imagine, sitting second, no worse than third. Kendrick, he's come up short a bunch this meet. I like Kendrick a lot. I mean, anybody who follows Aqueduct in the winter, how do you not like Kendrick? He's an affable guy. He's a gregarious guy. I like him a lot. But he's come up just short. But he's had a lot of good finishers still. He's had a lot of seconds, a lot of thirds throughout the meet. Sometimes those start turning into wins. At 15-1, there's at least a little bit of interest there with Slang, in my opinion. I think there's something there with that horse. I mentioned Strong State, a horse that lost to Sherbini, came back to win a restricted stakes, or restricted race, I should say, next time out. Only won by a neck, but those top 2 were clear 14 lengths over everybody else. So, yes, it only won by a small margin, but was so much better than everybody else running that day. That can't be overstated. Irad Ortiz Jr. stays aboard for trainer Albert Stahl, who's had another very good Saratoga meet, 4 for 9, much like John Ortiz, has been spotting the horses well and knowing where to put them. And again, this one I think has the ability to potentially appreciate a little bit more distance, showed the ability in debut to actually make up ground and come from off the pace. So the horse doesn't need to be up on the front end. If Irad's not able to get this horse up on the front end. I just think this is an intriguing race. You have a horse like the number 10 Bellicose, actually, for Jeremiah Englehart, who won super impressively against State Bred Company in debut. There are some questions how good that field was, but you win by 10 plus lengths against any field. That's going to be impressive. Junior Alvarado now takes them out. And, that's a horse at 15-1 might be able to give you a little bit of price there as well. Like I said, I really like pondering in this race. I think a horse like Sherbini is interesting at 8-1. I do think a horse like Bellicose at 15-1 is a little bit interesting. Quiet Side, I get it why she's the favorite. I'm going to try to beat her. I think I have her second in my official write-up that you can get on NYRA Bets. But listen, this is going to be a very fun rendition of the Spinaway. Can't wait for that. All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in to this Saturday Saratoga Stakes preview highlighted by the Grade 1 Spinaway. Make sure to press that like button and subscribe to all of our great content that we have on NYRA Bets. We got Capping the Card coming up for final day, closing day at Santa Anita. No, Saratoga. And so going to have that up later this weekend, as well as a preview of the Hopeful Stakes, where I'll be joined by my colleague at NYRA Bets, Kaylee Shapiro. All right, friends, for Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you it's now post time.